Hi everyone, it's Gary Nicholson here. This is your Planning Outlook video on Tuesday the 19th of March. The rest of this week is generally mild and very wet at times in western Scotland with a strong southwesterly wind. Cooler air returns into the weekend, not as chilly as some recent times, but it puts higher tops, particularly in Scotland, back below freezing, and then higher pressure is more likely into next week with generally quieter conditions. We'll start with a look at temperatures, and this is the 850 millibar level. Now that's a bit higher up at this stage as pressure and temperature is generally higher, so you'd have to go to Ben Nevis and keep going before you found 850 millibars, but it can give us a useful steer as to the general air mass at this stage, and it's a mild southwesterly for the next few days, temperatures above freezing even on the highest tops in Scotland, so a general thaw will continue for a day or so. Things change though as we go towards Friday as a cold front comes in from the northwest and we change the air mass to one that originates more off the North Atlantic as opposed to more out of tropical origins in the short term, and that will lower freezing levels perhaps quite quickly during Friday, and as we head into the weekend down to around 800 to 1000 metres, briefly lower perhaps on Saturday morning. So showers that come in from the North Atlantic, again falling as some snow or some hail on the mountains, particularly in Scotland. Fewer showers elsewhere, but still of a wintry flavour if you catch one across England and Wales on the highest tops. Now the cool air will stay in place more or less over the weekend into the early part of next week. Not the depth of cold that we've just seen in recent times, but still on the cool side across the mountains. Significant wind chill where exposed on those higher levels. And as we go into next week, it's a gradual lift of temperatures, I suspect, over a few days as pressure builds and a less cold air mass once again starts to move in. Looking at the charts over these next few days, and here's Wednesday, we've got a warm front pushing northeastwards. That will bring a lot of low cloud across the western coastal regions right the way from Wales to northwest England and western Scotland. Rain or drizzle chiefly across the West Highlands, turning a bit more persistent at times around Skye and those far western coasts. Spots of rain elsewhere, very little though toward the eastern side of the Cairngorms. Winds will strengthen, gale or severe gale force across northwest Scotland as we go through into the afternoon. Lighter winds for England and Wales. We stick with a strong southwesterly then into Thursday. Gale force across the Highlands most of the day will tend to vary maybe in speeds, 40-50 miles per hour on the Munros at times. A long trailing front then extends from Scandinavia back into the Atlantic, and along that will be some pulses of heavier rain focused on those western mountains. Orographic falls basically as the air mass just runs into that upland barrier, which generates some heavier rain around those western mountains, say around Skye, west of Loch Linnhe. Those are the spots most likely to see some heavy falls. Could be enough for some localised flooding with 50 to even 100 mil over the hills in some spots. Very little of that rain though spilling further eastwards towards the Cairngorms, so essentially a dry day and nothing really much more than spits and spots across the western hills of England and Wales, but a lot of low cloud with a damp air mass that is in place. Here's the cold front that we mentioned on Friday coming in, then the chillier air tucking in behind. The question at the moment is just how quickly that front will advance southeastwards. Some heavy rain continuing from Thursday evening overnight into Friday. That's likely to spread southeastwards to Cumbria, maybe even reaching Wales later in the day. Probably clearing from the Highlands. It might take quite a while to get fully out of the West Highlands. The Northwest Highlands, though, getting into a more showery air mass with cloud bases lifting away from those showers once the front clears. Again, not too much of anything getting to the eastern side of the Highlands, bearing in mind with chillier air tucking in behind any showers that follow, turning increasingly to snow above, say, 700 or 800 metres. The wind for Friday likely to be strong, gale force, severe gale force maybe around or just ahead of that front, southwesterly later turning westerly. Some uncertainty just where the remnants of those fronts have got to by Saturday. It's likely that Friday's front has sunk southwards into England and Wales. It may give a murky picture with some rain for a time, tending to fade as pressure is building from the west. Additional fronts trailing in towards northwest Scotland, these relatively weaker than Friday's, but may just produce some more organised showers at times across the northwest Highlands, these of snow or hail. The hail could fall to lower slopes, the snow generally above 600 or 700 metres, but giving some whiteout conditions perhaps at times on those higher areas. Winds at their strongest for Scotland might still be up to gale force, lighter winds though across England, Wales and the south of Scotland. Indications into Sunday keep high pressure out to the west of us. Still a strong westerly flow across northern Britain. Could still be gale, even severe gale force across the higher Scottish tops as further fronts are trailing through as well. So again, some showers, maybe some more organised falls of rain on lower slopes, snow on higher areas in the West Highlands, and some of those showers spreading eastwards at times as well. Fewer showers, but maybe a few banding together coming in off the Irish Sea toward northwest England and perhaps Wales, but drier the further south you go, the nearer to the centre of high pressure. And it's that high which looks like building further as we go onwards into next week. Now, some question mark about how quickly it gets in and how extensive the high becomes, but it looks as though a quieter period of weather is believable into that final week of March. The high trying to build further northwards with time, the ridge extending further north across Britain, deflecting any fronts further away from us then and allowing temperatures to rise gradually. Some low cloud could be stubborn across our western hills, but maybe not quite as extensive as what we'll have seen during this week. Some cool nights, some frost in the valleys and the glens overnight, temperatures by day recovering slowly, and some dry conditions for many, I suspect, through that week as a whole. Whether the high stays in charge right to the end of the month is uncertain. I suspect it tries to collapse away a little bit, maybe even moving more towards Scandinavia with time. I'm not convinced of the absolute detail by the time we get to the end of the week, but for a few days at least next week, quieter, settled conditions should be in charge. So still some wintry conditions to be found on the mountains heading into this weekend. That typical sort of late March weather really, where you're hanging on to the last of winter rather than being put back into the deep freeze. The strength of the wind is maybe the main concern, so keep an eye on those forecasts updated every day on our website. We'll have the next video for you on Friday. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.